their stated goal of helping veterans.
True.
Is that our topic for today?
We're gonna go all over the place. We're gonna be like we're gonna pattern the shotgun today, Dr. Fuller.
We're on a walkabout.
Yeah, exactly.
An intellectual walkabout.
Bingo. Good morning and welcome to the American Warrior Show's Monday edition with Rich and Dr. T.C. Fuller. Today's show is going to be, to quote Dr. Fuller, an intellectual walkabout. And I think as we're waiting for folks to jump on, Dr. Fuller, we'll just discuss what we were talking about in the green room, and that is the VA.
The VA, Veterans Administration. I think many of your audience members are at least eligible for VA assistance.
I'm sure they're using them probably in one way or another.
Yeah, or they could very well be like me. I mean, I am just now starting that Sisyphus and uphill battle with these people. As you know, I started talking to the VA in March of last year, and wow, what an absolute bureaucratic Gordian knot without the option of chopping it in half. Just unbelievable. As we were talking about in the green room, I picture them as the VA benefits are behind a wall, and the VA bureaucracy mans the ramparts, and rather than reach over and help the veterans on the other side get over the wall, it seems like though there's a systemic defensive mindset of pushing people down off of the wall.
Yeah.
And it's really, really stunning to me. It's absolutely stunning to me.
I think because it reminds me, I've got friends, and maybe you have used attorneys and outside agencies, third parties, to navigate through this. And it's the same thing with hiring, getting the best CPA you can. You can't do your taxes by yourself. It's like I don't do brain surgery on myself. And people are like, "Well, Rich, is it really that complicated?" It is when you own multiple LLCs and you have disability and military retirement, and you got multiple streams of revenue. It's a math problem that very few. It's a reason why we hired some of the best CPAs in Knoxville. I didn't even go to one here in town. I drive an hour and a half, and so with bated breath. The VA is no different. So I saw a chart recently, and then I'll turn it back to you, Dr. Fuller, and that was anything that the government tried to make easier or cheaper, it got harder and more expensive. Anything that you let the market float with it and the price comes down.
Yeah, well, I can absolutely believe that. I mean, if you privatize the VA, people would scream and yell about it, but I think it would streamline that system quite rapidly. To your point about having to hire someone, I did. I went through 4 separate VSOs, Veteran Service Officers, and eventually had to hire somebody. And what's fascinating to me is, as we were talking about, this system is supposed to help people. And I'm fortunate that I'm in a position where if the VA does nothing for me, I'll probably be okay. Right. Because I've positioned myself and I've worked hard and I've worked around things, and, I've gotten to a point where I'm all right. But not everybody's in that same boat. Right. Not everybody is in a position where they can go and get an education, they can go get a job. They can come out of the military severely damaged emotionally, mentally, and physically, and desperately need help that the VA tells them, we're here to give you. We're going to give it to you. You served, and we're here to honor your service, and we're going to take care of you. And those words are easy to spill out. But what I often find, and what I found in my particular case, was that when the rubber met the road, the actions spoke way louder than words. I went through 4 separate attempts with different VSOs by way of example. And you have a year from the time you do an intent to file to the time when your file has to actually be entered. And if you don't have it done in that year, you have to start over. But if you do have it done in that year, then any pay you eventually get is backdated to that start date. So, and that can be a significant amount of money.
Sure.
If they eventually decide they're going to give you $3,000 a month, for example, and it goes back that extra 12 months that you could keep or you could lose, that could be $36,000, which is a significant chunk of money for the vast majority of us here in this country.
And it's untaxed, by the
And
way.
it's
So,
untaxed. VA benefits are, as a matter of fact, I believe the law says that the VA cannot tell the IRS. It's illegal for them to tell the IRS what you make.
that's right. I don't, at the end of the year, I don't get a thing from the government saying this is what we gave you. I get nothing,
Which is great, right? Because that's
no reporting requirement.
In our example we're using here, that's $36,000 of tax-free money, and it can go fairly high. I think it can get up around $4,000, $4,500 a month
For 100%, yeah.
for 100% permanent and total. But the VSOs exist in each county, and they're supposed to help veterans navigate through the system. Basically, to use your metaphor, they provide a CPA for everybody. Now, you kind of expect that you're going to have places where there are good VSOs and bad VSOs. It's just the nature of bureaucracy and sort of human interaction.
A VSO is a veteran service officer.
Veteran service officer. But I reached out for the ones in my town, and look, I know how to do research, right? So I did research, and their website, the VA website, is confusing. It was confusing to me. All right. I mean, I navigated through a master's program and a doctoral program, couldn't navigate through the VA website. So I reached out to the VSO and said, okay, what do I do? How do I get started? What's the best tactic? No problem. I will do this. They took some information. I will do this and I'll get back to you. Okay. 4 months later, hadn't heard anything. 4 months. So I reached back. And frankly, it wasn't burning at the front of my consciousness. I wasn't jumping up and down about it. I reach out, eventually tracked this woman down that had told me she was going to reach out to me. And she says, okay, send me all this information. I'm like, well, I already sent you that information. The next communication I got from her was, oh, heavens, you seem to have gotten lost in the cracks. It's a quote, lost in the cracks. I'm like, okay, you and I are done. I moved on to another VSO. Got no phone calls back. Had a friend recommend to me a VSO in North Carolina because I live on the border. Went to that person, saw him, talked to him, sat down with him, told me all the things. Blew all kinds of smoke, and it was all rainbows and lollipops. So I was like, oh, wow, this guy's really hot to trot. He says, call me in 2 weeks and we'll set up an appointment. Great. Called him for 3 months, every Monday for 3 months. Sent him multiple emails. Never returned a phone call, never returned an email. To this day. I ended up being a keynote speaker at a luncheon where his boss was at my table for lunch. She brings up, oh, you were talking to so-and-so. I'm like, well, how much time do you have?
Mm-hmm.
Dropped a great big dime on him. She's like, oh my God, clutch her pearls. I'm terribly sorry this happened to you. We exist to help you. Call me next week and we'll set something up. Called her. Got her voicemail. Never called me back. A couple months later, she sends me an email. Oh, I'm assigning your case to my top guy. Never heard from him. So I'm like, that's it. I'm done. I'm done with you people. I'm at 9 months, 10 months into this process. I've only got this year. And as you pointed out, there's an entire industry that's popped up to help veterans navigate this. A private industry. There's a government program. The VSO program is supposed to help you get through it. And they are so inconsistent, in some cases bad, in some cases negligent at what they do, that an entire industry has popped up with multiple vendors to support people across the country.
Yeah.
Now, I will say this in the same token, the same voice. I'll say that there are some good VSOs. I have friends that have.
I had one. Great.
Speak their praises. You're one of those friends that has a fantastic VSO story, and that's awesome. But it's inconsistent.
Seeklander did not have a good VSO story. Most of the people don't.
Yeah. Dan Brady, he's been on the show. His first application zeroed him out. You got nothing. So now he's having to go back through the process, and he's hired. Or I think he's got a different VSO now. It's such a common experience that nobody is surprised when you tell them, oh yeah, I had this horrible.
No.
So as a result, anything that I eventually get from the VA, a third of it I have to give to this company.
For how long?
It's a one lump sum. So any back pay I get, bang, it's a
okay.
But it's a third.
Yeah.
It's a third, Rich. Now, again, I don't mind at this point because it's gotten to a point now where I don't need it. I'm just mad. So,
yes. Right.
I'm like, okay, if you're going to treat me like this, how are you treating the other guy? How are you treating the guy that doesn't have the resources, the time, the dedication that I have? How are you treating that guy? And then they said, 22 a day, we're losing all these veterans. Well, VA, you own part of that. You really do. Because you're not helping people the way you ought to be helping people consistently across the board. So I have to pay these people a third. And to be fair, they're goals are now aligned with my goals, right?
Right.
The better they serve me, the better they get paid. And I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with it philosophically, but I'm okay with it as a
capitalist.
Yeah, as a capitalist, as a tactic.
Yeah.
As a strategist, that's okay with me.
Yeah.
And in fairness, when they did get motivated, I think I filed my original intent to file on March 5th. I had until March 5th of the following year to return, of this year, to get my initial claim turned in. And they got it done on March 4th and got it turned in. So I came within 24 hours of losing that entire year. Now, that was in March. I started having appointments in October. So it took the VA from March to October to line up appointments. And I just had my last one last week of the initial tranche. So they have decided to give me tinnitus, as we were talking about. They have not given me hearing loss, which I find hysterical. But there's an appeal process for that. But I can see where people get incredibly frustrated and just drop out of the system, which saves people money. Right?
Yeah.
It saves the government money. Because
is that a feature or a bug, though?
Right. It depends on your perspective.
Exactly.
And it's such a mess that, like, I initially never applied for the last 30 years, 25 years, because my thought was there's a limited pot of money. And if I file, it takes, every dollar that comes my way is a dollar that doesn't go to that E4, that E3 with the TBI that really needs this life sustaining. So I don't want to take from him. Another friend of mine kind of explained to me how the funding process works, and the more people that apply to the VA, in essence, the more money the VA gets.
Right.
And so that it actually is a benefit. Even if the VA ends up paying me, there will still be additional monies that they put into hospitals and doctors and services that others can draw. Yeah. And that's what motivated me to get off my duff. And
well, the other thing is like that, I did whatever the Marine Corps told me to do without hesitation or reservation, and did it smartly and with 100% in. And you could do whatever you want. I remember one time at recruit training, the drill instructor, I had been rappelling as a kid, so I knew how you're supposed to, loop the thing. And I looked down, I saw he did it wrong. And I looked at him, and he's like, "You ready to go, Brown?" I'm like, "Yes, sir. I'm ready to run off this thing, because I'm like, well, I want to get free medical and dental, right? So I'll do what you tell me to do. But at the same time, I'm willing to do that. And people that write the check to Uncle Sam are willing to do that, sign that DD Form 4 and raise their right paw. But damn it, you're going to own the damage you do to me, number one. And really, what am I doing? I'm getting my tax dollars coming right back to me for damage you did to me. I mean, to me, it's a weird cyclical thing.
Well, it should be a quid pro quo, right? It's part of the deal.
Yeah.
And that it's not set up to actually take care of veterans simply by the fact that they don't make it part of your audit process.
That's right.
I mean, when I left the Army, and I'm sure when you left the Marine Corps, when that day came, it was a process, right? There's a week that you spend basically in the Army. It was like, okay, for the next week, you don't have any other duties other than clearing post and clearing the Army.
They call it TAPS in the Marine Corps, or they did a dozen years ago, and a transition assistance program. Yeah, and it's a week-long series of classes, how to wear a suit and how to freaking build a resume and how to conduct a job interview. And somewhere along, how to move your household effects. Just I'm relaying that out there, Dr. Fuller, for those that don't understand the process. And somewhere in there, if you're lucky, your base out processing TAPS program will have some VSO roll in and go, here's the veterans. I mean, here's how the VA works. I only have 30, 40 minutes of your time. Come see me down the hallway if you're interested.
Right. Which is light years beyond what they did for me when I got out of the Army. Especially as a commissioned officer, they were like, look, here's your checklist. Here's your sheet. Go and get a stamp and a signature from every one of these people that says you're cleared post. Okay. And know what was not on there? The VA.
Yeah.
And to me, that tells me right up front, you're not serious. Because you make me spend a day over at the central issuing facility trying to turn in a canteen cover, right? That's got dirt on it or whatever.
Why's it got rust on it, Dr. Fuller? What's it? Okay.
It's never been out of the bag. Whatever. I mean, how many of us just bought a whole full set of web gear and rucksacks and everything else of our own just to put the TA-50 that we were issued by the Army in a bag somewhere so we could turn it back in because CIF was such a nightmare. But you'll make me do that But you can't spend 4 hours sitting me down and registering me with the VA and turning in the paperwork I need to turn in to get into the VA system and then educate me on what the VA system offers.
Mm-hmm.
It's unbelievable. My father-in-law, 76 years old, was a drill sergeant, has never set foot in a VA, never talked to him. Now, I'm not saying that he has a disability or he doesn't have a disability, but if he did, he could have potentially been collecting for 50 years that the military, the VA has not had to pay because he hasn't collected, and he never will. He's never doing it there now. So that's a benefit. That's an unrealized benefit that they tell you all about, but they don't actually deliver. And they don't put any effort forth to try and educate you on how to get that benefit.
I'll give you
one of the few people I know that got out, but had it all his ducks in a row. And that's an impressive tale.
Well, what I was going to say is I'll give you one even worse. So you and I got out as reasonably healthy service members, right? And became healthy citizens. But what about the guy who has been on light duty for a while because he's really damaged, and maybe he was in the wounded warrior regiment for a while and convalescing, and finally he goes up in front of a med board and he's med boarded out. Even then, you would think, well, surely that's an integrated thing with the VA to transition him from the military health into the VA. Not necessarily. It really is dependent upon the command and the physicians and his willingness to put those two things together, because they're not automatic.
Right. And as you point out, the command, it starts there. If the person, it's his supervisor, NCO, officer, whoever it is ignorant of these facts, how are they going to provide help?
Yeah.
If they don't know what the VA offers. And of course they don't, because no one's ever told them.
Right.
So you want to talk about a systemic issue. This is a classic example of one. And it's criminal. I think it's criminal.
And I think I told you when I was doing my out processing, it happened just like I told you. And again, I got out of the Marine Corps twice. So the first time, I don't recall it in 1995, any inferences about the VA, but I know it was there in 2012 when I retired. And the guy, they even came in the room, and somebody's like, anybody here getting out of the Marine Corps and going back to Tennessee? And I'm the only one to raise my hands. Like, hey, sir, do me a favor. Don't do your VA in Tennessee. You got to do it here in South Carolina. It's a 3-year backlog. I'm like, 3 years. So, you got to take that information and make a good decision with it. And let me back up and let's welcome folks onto the show. We got 11 folks watching with us this morning. We got Johnny King. Tony says, I am back to dealing with the VA. I've had to say that it's definitely better than it was 10 years ago so far, but having problems getting an MRI scheduled. Yeah, good luck with that. Rhodes is on. And I don't mean to say that flippantly. I mean, I pay out of my pocket for my healthcare because all my friends tell me the horror stories and they're just ripping their hair out. And I'm like, yeah, I'm thank to God I'm in a whole nother position where I go, I don't need you. Because another part of the VA, and this is a hidden problem, is I've had friends that do need the VA, and they go and they're like, I'm struggling with some mental health challenges or with some issues with, in one friend's case, Somalia thing. He got wounded and he's had some issues, and he's like, they're giving him a bag of pills. And guess what? The minute you stop taking your freaking pills, you're in trouble. And then it got to where I was his employer at one point, and he was like, he comes in with this letter. I'm like, what is this from the VA? He's like, he's this close to being put inpatient. So in order to not do that, we ask that you let him come to the VA like every day for like 2 hours with his sack of meds, and he's got to show him the sack of meds and show him that he's taking them. And it's like, I don't need these people in my life. I don't need the government in my mental health at that level. But once you start talking to these people about it, they got to do something. And if the solution is here's a sack of meds and you're never going to be the same mentally again, I don't think I'm interested in that level of care.
And I absolutely get that. But for those that have no other options, I think the VA should be a viable option. And I think it should be a good option.
It should be.
It simply isn't. Now, I will also point out that this is not true across the board. It's very spotty. I was in a VA hospital 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, whenever it was, having a conversation. It was a beautiful building. It couldn't have been more than 5 years old. Gorgeous facility, very modern and outstanding fettle, and everybody that I seemed to talk to there was at least there. Now, some of the clerks were surly and grumpy and, what have you. Okay. That you're going to find that anywhere. I also figured out that apparently if you're going to go to a VA, you have to have a hat that says where you served and who you served with. I did not have the prerequisite baseball hat that literally every other person in the hospital had.
Shame on you, Doctor.
I know, clearly I didn't get that memo either.
No, sir.
But what really makes me upset about this whole process is the dichotomy between what they say and what they do. It's very easy. They speak with forked tongue, right? They say all the platitudes, right? Anybody that you watch talk about the VA will talk about all service to veterans and sacrifice and we owe and it's a debt that we can never repay. I mean, you could write the script yourself. You don't need me to do it. But then to see what actually happens, and I think Tony's point's right. It is a lot better than it used to be, right? I mean, it used to be just criminal what was going on in those hospitals, and their turnaround has gotten a lot better. But it's still months. And I think there are laws that have been passed now that force them to respond more quickly. But I'm constantly getting emails saying, oh, we pushed you back. We pushed you back. This happened. And oh, we pushed you back. So at least there is some communication. But of course, it's a pull system. I have to log on to the VA site and pull the information out. They don't send it.
Yeah.
And it's almost impossible to read your own file. That's another thing I find rather interesting. If I want to go in there and find out what Dr. X said about me,
right?
Yeah, no, you can't see that.
No.
Oh, you have a friend that put in a buddy statement for you? Yeah, you can't read that.
I know. They're crazy.
This bears on me, does it not? Okay. So it has some real challenges. And I think for people that are in that mental space where they really need, treatment, they need help. Failing to provide that help, I think can have really devastating consequences.
Yeah. I want to, in the, you and I always try to call balls and strikes. I want to give a bunch of praise to the Ralph H. Johnson VA Center there in Charleston, where I did all my stuff. They were phenomenal. I have nothing but the best thing to say about them in my VSO. And I think I say all that to say I'm the outlier. I had a phenomenal VSO. He told me to do this. And he also said, okay, you can put it in snail mail, brother, and it'll get there when it gets there. And you're not going to know what desk it lands on and all this kind of stuff. And you can throw it to the wind or you can drive it to Winston-Salem yourself. I'm like, have car will travel. And oh, by the way, since you're doing that, give it to Becky. She's tell her, So again, I'm a recruiter.
Yeah.
I'm constantly like, hey man, there's a relationship that I can grease and get this thing done. So it went perfectly. I retired on 1 August and my VA benefits started 1 August. I mean, it was as smooth and perfect as it absolutely could be. But I got a pro that knew what he was doing and I did everything he said and then some. I didn't use blue ink and they kick it back because it's got to be on black ink. And I followed every little bureaucratic bullshit Byzantine rule that they could throw at me. And I was aware of it and I made it my job. You know what I mean? But that's the way you have to do it. If you're going to get it, that should not be the case. Well,
it should be easier to figure out. That's for sure. So looking back now, I would have done a lot of things differently. Because now what's going to happen is I'm sure when they make decisions on my case, they're going to go back and go, well, you need this bit of proof and that bit of proof, deny it for these reasons. But when they deny things, they don't necessarily tell you why they deny it. So you've got to dig into that and then figure out, oh, okay, I said happy when I should have said glad. I said puppy when I should have said dog. At no point did you tell me this.
Yeah.
The ink thing. How did you know about ink? Well, someone told you. Someone on the inside told you. Well, what about the guy that doesn't have that option?
Well, and I think to your point earlier, I've known guys that were struggling, and their wife is left to do a lot of this stuff because maybe they've got a TB. I'm thinking of a real close friend of ours. I mean, he ultimately passed from his injuries, but when he wasn't passed away yet, a lot of the time he was sedated or he was on medication or he had a TB significant TBI. So even when he was lucid, he wasn't lucid. So the poor wife was left to make these decisions, and she doesn't know, she doesn't know the military that well, and certainly doesn't know the VA structure. So it would be nice if there were liaisons for stuff like that. You and I are
just the acronyms, just speaking military, right?
Thank you. I mean, yeah.
Miss Lisa's fairly familiar with it because she's been stuck with a Marine for most of her life.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the wife that's not? That doesn't speak the language, doesn't speak, then she's going to be completely dependent on a VSO. Maybe she gets a good one. That's awesome. Maybe
she probably won't.
Maybe she does. And if she doesn't, what happens then? At worst, or at best, the benefits go unrealized.
Yeah.
At worst, it adds to the trauma. Here she is, to use your example, she's already struggling with a debilitated husband, with a significantly shortened lifespan, just not the deal that she signed up for. And now she's got to try and navigate through all of this to get him the treatment that they say he's earned and that he deserves.
I think it's an indictment on the government more than it is on any one governmental agency. And that is, if you got some time and you want to get a good chuckle, or maybe you had, was it Schadenfreude, the enjoy other people's suffering, go and read the reviews of JFK's Customs and Border Patrol. It is a 1-star, and there are thousands and thousands of them. And because it flying in and out of JFK internationally for the last dozen years has been hell. I mean, I will do everything to try to avoid it, but sometimes, you get stuck in it. It's not, well, my point of saying this is it's never changed. They're not fixing jack squat.
No.
People are, while you're there, you could fill out a review. They have the little push button, rate your service today.
Doesn't matter.
People go on Google and fill out the reviews, and they have not changed one iota. And it just shows like, we don't care. It's the VA. Nobody's ever said, we're going to tear it down and build a more streamlined where you can fill it out on a card. A sixth grader can understand this. All the Byzantine layers will be stripped back, and we're going to give you the care that you need, and we're going to shepherd you through the process. It's like, nope, not a bit.
Not going to happen. And look, for those who are big fans of socialized medicine, you need look no further than military medicine and VA medicine.
Thank you, sir.
What you're staring at. If you think that that's the solution, it simply isn't. You may not like American healthcare expense, but when was the last time somebody said, you know what, I need this life-saving surgery. I'm going to Canada. I'm going to England.
Never.
It just doesn't happen, right? Because you may not like our doctors. And look, I didn't like what we were paying for my wife's cancer treatments. I mean, every time she sat down for chemotherapy, it was between $10,000 and $15,000.
Yeah.
Just for the chemicals. And then forget the nurses that had to administer it, the doctor that had to come by and pat you on the head, the free, half a can of Sprite that they'd come by and throw at me every now and then while I sat there. But she's alive.
Mm-hmm.
So
in Canada, they would have you thought about assisted suicide? It's beautiful. Peaceful.
We have a really nice aromatherapy program.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Who was that? Somebody was telling me about that recently. They had a really significant thing. It's like, well, have you thought about acupuncture and all this kind of crap? And I'm like, there's a solution over here. Right. Don't tell me about going to acupuncture. This is effing ridiculous.
Ask Steve Jobs about aromatherapy and crystal therapy. It was pancreatic cancer, right?
Right. He was and they could have saved him. I mean, but he tried his, I'm going to eat more carrots, and how'd that work out for you?
That's so hot. So I don't want to say that everybody that works in the VA is a bad person, because that's not the case. There are some people there that are truly motivated and truly trying to help out. But systemically, it has massive problems. And the people that are paying the price for those problems are the people that ostensibly that the VA exists to help.
Well, Alan Kelly has a point, Dr. Fuller. He's talking about, it's a nightmare of navigating Medicare, Medicaid, and insurance companies, all this kind of stuff. I've had to step into that world with aging parents. I'm not there in the Medicaid, Medicare world yet. Hopefully I'll live long enough to stomp into that little realm. But, You know, I look at the, well, hopefully not with TRICARE, but my point of saying that is my father, I have to deal with that with him. And it's like, look, guys, I don't have months to learn your stupid rules. You know, I've got an 80-something-year-old man that worked his whole effing life to put into this program, make it a little easier for an 82-year-old to understand.
Right. And don't treat him like he's some sort of mooch here getting a handout like Oliver Twist. Please, sir, may I have some more? Paid into the system.
That's right.
Right?
These are benefits that these are earned benefits.
Paid for benefits.
Yes, sir.
Paid for. You know, the government may treat it like their own little piggy bank, but that is not the case. And, you know, it's so funny. The longer I go, the more I see that the best benefit I got from my retirement from a government organization was lifelong Blue Cross Blue Shield. You know, I mean, don't get me wrong. You know, nationwide concealed carry is pretty slick too. But I gotta be honest, you know, having that insurance coverage for the rest of my days is increasingly important to me.
Yeah, Tony says, you know, my wife's chemo costs were enormous, but it's been 5 years since the end of her treatment. All's good. Praise God for that. That's the great thing about our system of medicine. You don't like what one doctor said. I mean, hell, when I had my AFib 11 years ago, the first doctor that I talked to was kind of like, I'm like, well, can I still hike? Can I do this? I like to go to Montana every year and blah, 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 to go backpack out in the mountains. He's like, you know, you're dying. I mean, he was just awful. And I mean,
dying like everyone else is dying, or dying like next week dying. You know?
Yeah, like, aren't we all, doctor? Yeah. Well, no, he was just really like, you don't understand, you know, and it was just terrible. Me and my wife joke about it now, but I mean, I was in such a dark place. I came home, opened the car door, and just laid on the driveway. You know, I'm like, I don't want to hear this shit. I feel healthy. And I got the next doctor's like, what's this guy talking about? You're fine. You know, you know, he's like, here, look, this is your normal, beautiful sinus rhythm. It's I don't know. And he was just like, I'm like, well, I feel good. He goes, then go do it. Is there any restrictions? Go live your life. And here I am 11 years later in phenomenal shape for my age and doing everything I want to do. So that's the beauty of our system of medicine. It's messy. It's expensive. But if you don't like what this guy's wanting to treat you, hey, appreciate, thank you. I can go over here. Socialized medicine, you're screwed.
Options. Yeah. My wife's cancer was the same thing. You know, we were up in DC at the time, and you know, getting any kind of appointments and getting into the treater, like anything other than a number, was very difficult. Came down here to the Carolinas, and you know, her family's a little bit more connected down here, so they pointed her in the right direction. She got in with people, and you know, rather than say, hey, look, 6 weeks, we're going to take a look, we'll give you this other test. And then, you know, depending on the results from that, a month after that, we'll give you this other test. Down here, they're like, look, we're going to hit you with all 4 tests right now.
Right.
She got in with a surgeon. He's okay. This is what we're going to do. Pop, 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 pop. She went to talk to the oncologist. I'm never, ever going to forget this oncologist. She was just a white-haired, 60-year-old lady with the little half glasses. And she was personally offended by the concept of cancer. She took cancer very, very offended. She's like, oh no. So my wife said, okay, well, after these chemo treatments, you know, how much of this mass is going to be left for the surgeon? And the lady looks over her glass and goes, oh, there will be no left. There will be no cancer. The surgeon will not be able to find anything when I'm done. And I'm like, oh shit, I like this lady. And you know what? She was as good as her word. When it was time for the surgeon to go in there, I couldn't find anything.
Wow.
Yeah. So we got in with a great crew, but had we stayed in DC,
yeah,
you know, the nearest good oncology center for us was all the way up at Johns Hopkins, which was on the other side of DC. So that would have been, you know, the commute from 30 miles south of DC to Baltimore.
Hours.
Back and forth with a small child. And it would have been a nightmare. So like you said, we had options.
And that's
that wouldn't have been the case.
And that's a funny thing, you know, when Lisa's had some back issues, and I said, okay, well, you don't seem to be able to do anything here. Is there anybody else you can recommend? Yeah, you know, and they're about 45 minutes down the road, but I'm like, okay, are they the best? Well, no. Where's the best? Well, it's Vanderbilt, but that's an hour and a half drive. Like, I don't give a crap. I don't give a shit if it's in Guam.
My wife. Okay.
Right. What are you not hearing? There's nowhere I would not go, nothing I would not do. An hour and a half drive, we'll go down there and eat some amazing barbecue downtown. Go to Vanderbilt.
Absolutely. And that's what we did. And that's the other thing too, for those who have not had that rare pleasure of going through cancer. My mother lost her fight to cancer when I was 10.
Mm.
So I watched her fight it. And then, fast forward years later, now my wife is fighting. And now, of course, my wife is 10 years past it. But at the time, I was like, oh, Christ, I know what this is going to look like. This is just not. I mean, this is horrible. And I'll tell you, those that have had this experience, the cancer fight and the chemotherapy and radiation in the 1970s, it was vastly different. My mom would come home and she'd be wiped out for days. I'd have this 8-year-old kid. I'm staying at home cleaning up and throwing away vomit and doing all this stuff to take care of her. My wife would go to chemo, and the first hour of her chemo treatment was just treating the nausea that was to be expected from the chemo treatment. Mm. So after chemo, we'd go to lunch. I'm like, this is crazy. She should be like passed out in the back seat of the car. I should be, like walking on eggshells. No, none of that. Now, are you making those kind of advances in a socialized system? Maybe. Do you care about patient comfort as much in a socialized system? I don't know. But if you get a chance to charge me an extra $3,000 to make sure she's comfortable and not vomiting, then you're going to take it and I'm going to pay it.
Amen. And let's talk about the unforeseen problems of the socialized medicine. We didn't intend to talk about medicine in the VA.
Wasn't the plan, but here we are.
No, but here we are, and I think these are things that people should talk about. Thank you to the 16 folks with us this morning. Tony says it hit my wife on the 3rd day after treatment. Man, Guy says I've seen that scenario for 24 years. I'm honestly tired of it. Yeah, Guy was in the healthcare industry over in Philippines. When I was in the UK, there were I went to a gun store, and I probably told this story.
That's how old you are.
Yeah.
In the UK when they still had gun stores.
Well, this is, I don't know, 5 years ago. And, but of course it's in like a bank vault, right? And there's chains locking everything up. And, but talking to the guys, I gave them some American Warrior Society stickers, explain that. And, I think one of them had heard of the podcast or something, not important, but they were asking me how the concealed carry works. And I handed them my license, and they were literally like, oh, you don't know how good you got it. And they were telling me, like, if you have a gun, your healthcare provider knows it. Everybody in the chain knows it. And they're, how are you feeling today? Are you okay? And then when your wife goes in,
at home, that's my favorite question I've started hearing. The doctors here in the States.
Yeah. And then how's your dad doing? When kids go in there,
they have
any mood swings or anything. I mean, I don't want that. I don't want no freaking part of it. So, but that's what you get when you get free health care.
Yeah. When I was still on the job, we took my son to the doctor. He was just an infant at the time. We took him to a pediatrician, and pediatrician, as part of her initial meeting, first time we've been to this pediatrician, she pulls out her paperwork and she's going through it, asking questions. And she says, do you have guns in the house? Mm-hmm. And of course, I'm like, lady, we got 2 guns in your office, right?
Thank you.
But that wasn't the response I gave her. What I gave her instead was I leaned forward and go, well, why? What do you need?
Yes.
what are you in the market for?
Yeah.
But it's the Carolinas, right? So once we said, well, yeah, but we're law enforcement, right? I wasn't going to elaborate on that. So, and she's like, oh, really? What do you? And now it's a conversation about guns because she's got guns and she likes to shoot. And I'm like, I have moved to the right place. This is my tribe. Because if I was up in Massachusetts or Vermont or New York, a whole different direction this conversation's going. I say that to say those questions that you dealt with in England, they're coming this way. Yeah. They're drifting over here. And I have no interest. I mean, I understand that that there are increased risks involved in gun ownership, but I also understand statistics well enough to know that my gun is far less dangerous to me than you are, doctor. So statistically speaking, you are way more likely to kill me than the gun on my hip. And the drive to and from your office is far more likely to kill me.
That's right.
On my hip.
Yeah. Third or fourth leading cause of death in the United States. 10x almost the number of people that are killed in automobile is killed by your healthcare provider. So I limit your exposure, I guess is what I'm going. Michael Gentili says, of course, Michael has forgotten more about the healthcare system than anybody will ever know. That is his bailiwick. Says, any system that places a payer organization between the consumer and the provider sucks. And that's a technical term for beyond terrible. Yeah. And I think an appropriate pivot might be that I woke to the news this morning of, obviously, we saw the terrible tragedy of the 15, 16 that have been killed in at Bondi Beach in Australia. And of course, this morning, CNN, Al Jazeera, I think even Reuters was saying that Australia is now looking to make their gun laws tighter. And because I told my family yesterday when I was watching the one of the guys use a bolt action rifle, the son was using a bolt action rifle, and his Islamic terrorist father was using a shotgun.
Huh? A father-son pair?
There's a father-son pair, yeah. A 24-year-old son, a 50-year-old father. And they had acquired their guns legally and lawfully as Australian citizens. They had went through every hoop and jumped through everything, and they used those guns to kill. No different than what we saw in Norway with the largest mass killing in history. 77 people, I believe, were killed July the 22nd. And he had went around Europe trying, because he knew that the Norwegian gun laws were insanely, cumbersome. So he went around Europe trying to acquire guns. And when he could not, he came back to Norway and went, okay, what do I got to do? I'll fill out the reams of paper. Not a problem. I'll take the classes, and he did everything to the letter until he started killing children. No different than Stephen Paddock, at the Harvest Massacre here in Vegas. So another law isn't going to stop anything. You know what it did stop? It stopped the people from being able to kill the terrorists, and that's why it went on for how long, Dr. Phil? Like 20-something minutes?
29 minutes, I think.
29 minutes, yeah.
You're talking about Bondi Beach, right?
Yes, sir. Bondi Beach, yeah.
Now, what's funny is there's all kinds of videos of it. I'm thinking, well, if one person with a cell phone had a gun, it doesn't go on for 29 minutes.
No, sir.
It doesn't go on for 29 minutes. And, people are going to start to get pissed off about this. And they're going to realize that gun laws are not, they're a panacea. They're not going to get us where we need to be. And what concerns me is at some point there's going to be a backlash against Islam. I mean, a bad one.
Oh, yeah.
Really bad one. And there are people out there that are cynical enough to want that sort of thing. And we saw even from the videos that we were looking at yesterday where one of the arrestees is on the ground in Bondi Beach and some citizen comes up and curb stomps him. I'm like, I understand the emotion, from a tactical perspective and a technical perspective as a law enforcement officer. That's a failure on the part of the law enforcement officers on the scene to secure the scene properly. That allows some poor citizen who's just been through that experience to come over and curb stomp a guy in the back of the head while he's down on the deck. You can understand the emotion. You can't support the action. But to me, that's a metaphor for a larger response that is in the offing. I mean, it's coming. And look, Islam's been around for 1,400 years.
It's been causing problems for 1,400 years.
It's been very clear about its objectives for 1,400 years. But it hasn't made the inroads into Western civilization that it's made in that 1,400 years until, the last 20?
The last 20, the last generation.
Yeah. I mean, of course, if you discount the whole conquest of southern Spain thing, if we let that slide.
But they had to kick their ass out of there.
Yeah, but it took them a while, but they did it.
Yeah.
And look, 9/11 happened 25 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And look at the upswing in Islam in the West since then. And I would have thought the pendulum would have swung way far the other direction. Yeah. And that, they would have been PNG'd everywhere. That nobody would want anything to do with Islam after that little display. But instead, a generation later, they've elected a Muslim mayor in the city that got hit. I just
London has a Muslim mayor. Birmingham has a London mayor. Liverpool has a London mayor. Manchester has a London mayor. I could go on and on. I don't understand. And these are, the size of England. They need to start voting because this 6 million people that are voting are are running roughshod over the other 60, 70 million people that live there.
Yeah. And at what point is the ship sunk?
Yeah.
You're flooding the ballast, you're getting a little carried away. And at what point does the ship sink? And what worries me is that you're going to have what you started to see in England last summer was a backlash, right? Where people were like, I've had enough. And if you're going to come arrest me for painting the George Cross on a sidewalk because it's the George Cross and it's somehow inflammatory. I just don't think the average person on the street is going to put up with this much longer. And saying, oh, well, it's a gun problem in Bondi Beach. No, it wasn't a gun problem in my mind.
No, hell no. Of course
it was a violent Muslim problem.
Yeah.
And that's not to indict the remaining Muslim.
Charlie Hebdo in Paris, right, Dr. Fuller? I mean, you had, I don't know where the hell they got their AKs. I assume they smuggled them in, but you didn't have anybody there that could stop it, and they slaughtered everybody. And what did those people at Charlie Hebdo's magazine do to deserve to be massacred?
Published a cartoon.
They published a cartoon, Dr. Fuller, that had an image of the Blessed Prophet Muhammad. And it's like, this is not a problem of race or ethnicity, guys. This is a cultural problem. I want to be very clear with that. I don't think Dr. Fuller or I have a issue with your ethnicity, if you're Italian, Syrian, whatever. But some cultures can never mix, and especially if one culture's idea is dominance.
Well, if you've been inculcated since birth in a ideology, we should not be surprised that when you're an adult, you're an adherent of that ideology.
Yeah.
Now, if that ideology is Buddhist and peaceful, and not that there haven't been violent Buddhists, someone's going to write and say, "Oh, you forgot about this thing that happened." Then don't be surprised when they grow up and they're a peaceful Buddhist. But if you've been inculcated and just seeped in ideology that calls for violent destruction of particular groups of people based on their religion, based on their nation, based on their gender, based on any of these things, don't be surprised that when you're 30 years old or when you're 50 years old, you're 24-year-old, you've raised, not only are you so deep into that pool that you are a true believer, but you've raised your own kids to be true believers. And you say, hey, bud, we could watch the cricket game, or why don't you go grab your gun and we'll go down and we'll shoot up all those Jews that are having a celebration across town. Yeah, that'll be great. Let's do it, Dad.
Yeah.
Who has that conversation?
Well, let's go back to your point about, has there been a Buddhist terrorist attack? I'm sure it's happened somewhere, but I'm looking right now, according to Google here, in the Fonda pool, which I guess is a research organization that tracks these things, between 2001 and April of 2024, approximately 64,678 Islamic terrorist attacks were recorded globally, resulting in at least 243,124 deaths. And yet, I'm supposed to be told that it's a religion of peace and we need to be tolerant of the mosques that are in our neighborhoods and things of this nature. And my tolerance is this religion is on thin ice with me. Let me say that again. This culture is on thin ice with me. Not necessarily the people, because it was a Muslim man who stopped the killing yesterday at Bondi Beach. And he got shot twice for doing it. And he's a hero and he deserves every accolade he could possibly get. But he's a business owner in that community. He owns a fish market or something. And he saw somebody doing something abhorrent in his community and murdering people. And he run to the sound of the guns, like I would hope anybody listening to the sound of our voices one would do, irrespective of his religion. But culturally, you can't mix.
Well, pre-Gulf War, especially, but certainly pre-9/11, ran into plenty of Muslims. In California, there was a mosque right across the street from my college. Didn't give it a whole lot of thought. Occasionally you'd see someone wearing a hijab. Okay, whatever. It wasn't an issue at all. But in the last 25 years, what has happened? What has happened with people's perceptions, between pre-9/11 and now? And I'm not even going to say it was 9/11 was a trigger in my head. That it was a trigger in anybody else's head. But it's very easy to look at what has happened since then in just sort of global Islamic behavior. Now, I'm not going to try to pretend that it didn't happen prior to 9/11, but it seems to have really gotten supercharged since then. And I worry that people's tolerance is being mistaken for weakness and cowardice. And at some point that tolerance is going to run out. And I think what we're going to see is a significant violent backlash.
Yeah. I mean, Munich should have been the turning point for me. Not to say that Munich was the first Islamic terrorist attack. It certainly wasn't. This is why looking at, the fund pool that tracks this stuff, dude, don't start in 2001. And I get you got to start somewhere because we're going to go all the way back to 600, and I mean, if you want to do that, there are millions upon millions and tens of millions of people have been slaughtered by this religion of peace.
I remember when I was assigned to the Sinai Desert, I was there for a year, bomb disposal guy, and I was crossing the border one time between Egypt and Israel, and
the old Rafah Gate.
Yeah, Rafah Gate, baby. And so I'm at Rafah, and you always got delayed there. But in order to go from Egypt into the Gaza Strip, you had to pass through a small piece of Israel, and that was deliberate. The Israelis kept that land between the two, so that anybody transferring between those two countries had to go through them and had to go through their customs. They could figure out who's going through there. Well, Yasser Arafat,
borders and walls.
I know. Apparently, walls have reasons. It's really easy. But Yasser Arafat used to come through there every now and then, and he had like this big 9 Land Cruiser caravan that he would zip around in, and all the backs of the caravan of the Land Cruisers all had curtains, so you never knew which vehicle he was in. Our Huey pilots used to practice gun runs on his convoy when they'd see him. They didn't have rockets or missiles; they just practiced. But he had an outlier, this guy that would fly down the road ahead of him in a BMW 7 Series, which was very incongruous, going through the abject poverty of Egypt and the Gaza. But this guy would fly along, and he would tell the different checkpoints and whatnot, hey, Uncle Yasser's behind me, he's coming through, and then they would do all the paperwork and check all the blocks, and so he wouldn't be stopped. Right? Heaven forfend you stop that guy. So I'm crossing the border one time, and everything gets shut down. Yasser's 15 minutes out, nobody moves. Clear the decks, open the gates. So when he comes, boom, he just bombs through. And I'm standing there with this Israeli border guard, because where I happened to be in the process when this happened, I got shut down, and I'm just standing next to this border guard. Okay, so we just stand here and wait. We're shooting the breeze, as soldiers do, right? And here comes Yasser's caravan, just sitting flying by, and at one point they're kind of they're flying by. They have to slow down to kind of weave through the barricades and what have you. And Yasser looks out the window at us. He's it's from me to where my computer is, right? He's that close to me. And he's staring at me. I'm staring at him. I'm an American uniform. And he's driving by, and I look at the Israeli, and he's just got this abject look of disgust on his face. And I go, 10 years ago, if either one of us had shot that fucker in the head, we'd have gotten a medal.
Yeah.
And he laughs and goes, yeah, no kidding. This is now, pardon my language, by the way, but now we got to stand here and kiss his butt. I'm like, what is going on? What is going on?
Say the same thing for the president of Syria right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And eventually, and Arafat got the Nobel Peace Prize. I'm like, wait a minute, you blow up enough planes and kill enough people and kidnap enough people, shoot up enough schools, they'll give you a peace prize? Huh. Okay.
That's right. But Donald Trump will probably never be in Stockholm to get squat. And,
if he was Democrat, he might. I mean,
yeah.
Obama got one.
For doing nothing but breathing.
It's pretty cool. And then didn't Gore got one? Well, he didn't get a peace prize. What did he get? He got a Nobel Prize for something else. Maybe it was a peace prize. He got a Nobel Prize for his advocacy.
Climate crusade.
Climate change, yeah.
We are living in interesting times, my friend. Of course, we had, a shooting in Providence, Rhode Island. I mean, and having been to Providence a lot, having family in Providence, I love Providence. It's an amazing school. And the pubs and the restaurants around the Brown University campus are phenomenal. And then, but I don't carry a gun when I'm in Providence. Can't carry a gun when I'm in Providence. And the people that I hang around with up there, like they would clutch their pearls, like, guns. And then, of course, it doesn't stop anybody.
Yeah, well, in fairness to the shooter at Brown University, he probably didn't see the signs that said no guns on campus.
True.
Probably was unaware. I'm sure if he knew that guns were not allowed on campus, he would have stopped and said, curse you and your sign, and gone back and done something else.
Mm-hmm. Don Bothwell says, Munich was the awakening point for me. I was in high school, and during a social studies class, we had a couple of Middle Eastern speakers come talk to us about their culture and religion. I asked them a series of questions about the Munich massacre, and they started stumbling all over themselves and actually tried to defend the event. That riled up the whole class, and our presentation ended early. I took that as a win, and you should. I mean, and I've talked about this on the show too. Lisa and I were at a restaurant, a really good restaurant in Beaufort, South Carolina, Panini's, and we're sitting outside, and the palm trees are swaying. It's beautiful. And this guy's older couple sitting next to us, and he's like, "We've never been here. Is this good?" And I tell him, "Yeah, we eat here all the time." I'm like, "What are you doing here? You've heard me tell this story." He's like, "Oh, I got a PhD and this and that, and I'm here to give a lecture to some squadron at Beaufort Naval Air Station about Islam and all this stuff." I'm like, "Oh, great. What is the solution to that?" And he's like, "You really want to know?" Wipes his mouth. This. He put his finger just like that at my forehead. Goes, "That's the only solution." And I was like, "Whoa." So all the letters behind your name has led you to one conclusion. It's kinetic only. Yeah. Like, well, that was easy.
Yeah, violence is not the answer, but sometimes it's the only solution, right? And that was something interesting in one of the media posts I read about Bondi Beach yesterday, was that, they kind of laid out all the facts, and in the last paragraph of the news report was the Islamic Society here in this area wants to remind people to report any incidents of Islamophobia, ostensibly resulting from this. I'm like, how did that end up in this same news report of two Islamic men shooting up a bunch of Jewish people, killing 12, including the rabbi, wounding however many more they wounded? But our priority is now to be concerned about Islamophobic incidents. Mm-hmm. Huh. Okay.
I don't get that either, man. I that blows me away, because
we're doing it to ourselves, Rich.
Yeah, no, it's like anti-Semitism. I will never understand, because Jewish people aren't blowing themselves up. They're not doing the things that this. So
they might sue you into oblivion, but they're not going to blow you up. Yeah.
I mean, the Jewish people I've met are phenomenal people. Just love them to death. They make great Marines. They make great friends. I don't understand anti-Semitism. I just don't get it. However, I think that if anyone came across as Islamophobic to me, I was like, well, you're just a realist. There's an issue here. And I forget who it is that this one woman says something about Islam, and she talks about, okay, 1.8 billion is Muslim people in the world, and by any stretch, it's 15 to 25% of them are radicals, but you're still talking about a ginormous cohort. And again, if you want to go live in a country where Sharia law is there, I think that's fantastic. Keep that crap within your border, and you can live your life and make your daughters wear burqas, and your 7-year-old daughters marry 80-year-old men so that you can get more camels. I don't know what the hell they're doing. Don't care. Call me a Western chauvinist if you want to. That's just the way it is. I see it.
Well, I'm not prepared to say I'm Islamophobic. I'm not, because a phobic scale reaction to someone who's Islamic, I'm not ready to have. Mm-hmm. And if I meet a Muslim, I have a neighbor down the street here, as a matter of fact, great guy, absolutely great guy. I judge him on the content of his character, on how he behaves, and how his children are raised. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm judging him on. I don't give a crap about his religion until he uses that as an excuse to come hit me in the head with a brick.
Then we got a problem.
Then I start to become concerned.
But I think you have to give, if we're going to do that as Western society, and I don't necessarily have a problem, then they have to have the tools and the ability to defend themselves against the guy whose Quran tells them clearly that you have to strike the infidel and find him where he lives and all this other crap. Okay, great. Then you have to give them the tools, because I don't know when that poison M&M is going to bump into me on the street. And they don't. They disarm these people.
Yeah. And you have to take them at their word. Right? Yes. We talked about that on the show how many times? How many dictators in the past have told you exactly what they're going to do? How many people have have written books, made speeches, said, look, this is what we're going to do. All right. Now, maybe you get to court later and say, no, you come up with all kinds of reasons that was not really what you were going to do.
Mm-hmm.
But don't be surprised when I take steps to defend me and mine based on what you say you're going to do. And let's paint the whole picture. You said you were going to do this thing, and a whole bunch of people who think just like you and said the same things have done this thing.
Yeah.
So it would be foolish of me to ignore your propensity for violence.
Right.
If I see that you're a gangbanger, if I know you're a member of a particular set of Crips in a particularly violent city, and I know that everybody in that gang is that I've seen, yes, are there peaceful members of that gang? Probably. But are you surprised that I treat you like a threat? Or I know that you're a member of the Hells Angels, or I know that you're a member of the Latin Kings, or I know that you're a member of the Gambino family of the Mafia. If you're in an association that is based on violence and extremism, and members of your association have involved themselves in violence and extremism, and you've published books and novels and speeches and about how you want people to be violent and extreme, I'm Islamophobic, or I have a phobia about the Hells Angels. I have a that's genius on your part.
Yeah.
Rich, I'm going to come to your house and shoot you in the face. And if you take any steps to defend yourself, you clearly are TC phobic and must be canceled.
I know.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. It is unbelievable. It truly, truly is. Tony says, I work at Brown and things are a little different here today. Tony, I did not know that, sir. I hope you guys are doing okay up there. I don't think they've caught that guy. I don't even know. I have not seen any kind of like be on the lookout for a black male, white male, Hispanic male. I don't know who this person is. Do they know who this person is?
I don't know. My wife and I keep a very, as you well know, rigid Chinese wall about work stuff. So if she has heard anything from work about this, and typically they would, typically if something like this happens, the Bureau puts out information internal to the Bureau about, what's going on. But if she has heard anything, she hasn't shared it with me, nor do I expect her to, nor will I ask her.
Yeah, it seemed, I was looking into the details before we came on this morning, and it was like, it happened right at 4:00, right at this one specific building. It seemed targeted to me. You know what I mean? It's not like we saw with Bondi Beach, although that was obviously targeted because it's like a Jewish festival. It's going to be a large crowd. They're obviously disarmed, and we can stand on this bridge and just shoot till our heart's content.
Yeah, that was it was an interesting tactical exercise on their part.
Yeah.
They have two shooters, but still relatively fixed in position.
And did you watch him, the one killer, the son, working that bolt?
Yeah,
on that bolt gun.
On that gun. Yeah.
He's obviously trained himself or had some training.
Yeah, he's obviously been to the range, and he probably, I'm not prepared to say he's had formal training, but he's probably gone to the range and practiced rapid fire to the extent he could. Had that guy had real solid formal training, then he probably wouldn't have stood on the bridge and were in full view of everybody. He'd have been up on a roof somewhere and just potting people left and right, and they never would have known where it was coming from.
Mark is our one guest who seems to be on almost every single time. I don't know if Mark, if you're on this morning right now, maybe you can help us with the Australian gun laws. But the last time I looked at him, it was a very cumbersome, very laborious process. You had to become a member of the range, so you had to go through some process of vetting, like with the gun club I'm a member of, ORSA. You have to be sponsored in. You have to go through they have to do a background. There has to be a vote. Then you got to go through 2 levels of orientation that are day long. A very laborious process. And if you do anything wrong, you're out. So Australia requires that. And then once you get there, then you're able to start going through training. And at some point, if you get enough sign-offs, so you've been through enough training, then you could purchase the gun, and the gun will stay at that club. And you could come in and check out your gun and shoot your gun, and then you turn your gun back in and get in your car and go home. And after enough time and enough sign-offs, then you could take your gun home. But before you could take your gun home, you install the safe in your home, and then a police officer will come and inspect your safe, make sure it's all in accordance with the laws. and then you will be escorted with your gun and put it in there, and you take some more classes. But even if they break into your home, you still cannot use that gun to defend yourself. That's a right you do not have. So I would imagine, since it's being reported that he received these weapons lawfully, that he jumped through every one of those ridiculous hoops, and it saved no one.
Yeah, and did it all in order to do this.
Yeah, because people are missing the point, man. It's not the tool. It is absolutely not the tool. We need stricter gun laws in Australia.
Well, they've got them in England, and what happens there? Knife attacks. Now they've got a license.
Acid attacks,
Acid attacks. And let's say you get rid of all of that. What's going to happen then? Spears, crossbows, longbows, pots and pans.
May I remind you and the audience of how they stopped the one jihadist killing people? It was a narwhal tusk in a museum and a fire extinguisher. That's a true story.
Which attack was this?
One in London a few years ago. Somebody look it up. It was these brave men. One of them pulled a narwhal tusk off of a museum wall and used it like a spear. And the other guy had a fire extinguisher. And somebody's like, "Oh man, we got a narwhal tusk problem in London." Oh my God, look how dangerous those things are, Dr. Fuller. We need to do something about that.
Well, and that's just, and look at jails, look at prisons. People get killed and shanked and maimed and murdered in those places all the time. And they have pretty strict gun control. And the point to this, of course, and I think it's the point you're making too, is you can take away the tools. People are the weapon. The mind is what's the Marine Corps motto?
One mind, any weapon.
One mind, any weapon. And it's a good approach, right? I mean, it's what allows you to say, "Oh, I'm unarmed with these 3 pencils and my leather belt." I mean, there's a not Brad Pitt, movie that The Accountant, right?
Yeah.
Big guys fighting, what's his name? Ben Affleck. And Ben Affleck takes off his belt and commences to beat the guy senseless with his belt. Point being, look, the wrong guy gets a cell phone, he's going to hurt you with a cell phone. I've got a steel cup here on my table. I don't want Rich Brown coming after me with that thing.
Yeah. The Marine Corps had this series of books. It was like the ICB or something, individual combat skills. I don't know what it was, but there was one of them in there like on unarmed combat. And one of them was like how to kill a combatant with your canteen. And it was literally like take that 1 quart canteen and smash, get them on the ground, basically ground and pound them, smash their face into a pulp, and then take the water and pour it down and drown them with that canteen of water. And this was wow. This was not tongue in cheek. This is hey man, anything and everything on the battlefield is there for you to complete your mission with. So, I mean, if that's your mindset, then, and you have a long enough horizon, Stephen Paddock, how many times did he carry ammunition and weapons, like 7 or 8 different times to the penthouse?
Yeah.
I mean, and still people are like, why would a millionaire do that? A guy that had everything. I don't know. Why does a rabid dog bite you? I don't know. They just do.
There's no predicting crazy, and that's the issue.
Kyle says, what's the point of having it? Kyle says, I'm sorry, Dr. Fuller. Kyle says, what's the point of having a gun if you can't use it to defend yourself? Aussie gun rules, UK gun rules, absolutely dumb. I couldn't agree with you more. Jay is on out there in Hawaii. Good morning, brother. Good to see you on. Both Tonys say they.
Pacific is well represented today.
That's right.
PI and Hawaii, huh?
Yeah.
Right.
Paycom. Tony says, had a person of interest, but let him go. Don't know who they are looking for now. And if you don't know and you're actually working on Brown University, then I would say nobody knows, which is a shame. Yeah.
And, every time I see these stories, every single time, I just keep coming back to if one person had a firearm and was relatively well-trained, it changes the entire rubric. Even those guys yesterday in Bondi Beach, even if somebody hadn't put them down until the law enforcement officers arrived and did the close quarter battle that needed to be done, just incoming fire has an effect. It has an impact. It slows things down. It stops their rapid movement. And they don't just get to have their way. Right? We say it all the time in the military. The enemy gets a vote. Well, taking away the option to have firearms removes your vote in a violent confrontation.
So glad you said that. A lot of people that haven't been in the infantry don't understand, if you want to take a position, you set up a base of fire and you have two maneuver elements, right? So the base of fire isn't necessarily to kill anybody. If you do, that's fantastic. It's to get them pinned down so that I can maneuver on you and take you out. So to your point, yeah, even if the civilians fire wasn't that effective, if it got them to duck behind the concrete, that's somebody they're not killing in those seconds that they're behind that wall. And it's buying time.
It slows their movement and allows increased movement on the part of the people who are being shot at.
Yes.
To your point, it's a very, very basic infantry concept.
Yeah.
Put rounds at the enemy, right? Establish a superiority of fires. I'm sure that language is used in the Marine Corps as well. I may not be hitting anybody, but I'm shooting 3 bullets at you for every 1 bullet you're shooting at me. Well, who ends up ducking in that scenario?
Yeah.
Right?
And if you watch specific, like to the Bondi Beach, Dr. Fuller, like you see the people pouring out of the event, or you could say the same thing for the Harvest Festival. People were pouring away. So if I can pin you down for 10 seconds, how many people can run out of that kill zone in 10 seconds? Dozens of people are going to be saved because of that, even that ineffective fire. Mm-hmm. But you got to give people the tools, especially if you're going to allow cultures that their doctrine tells them to kill the infidel, then you're going to have to give people the ability to fight back, or you're going to have to get them out of your culture.
Yeah, but really, or third option, you're just going to accept these sorts of events as inevitable.
Yeah.
And you're going to have this sort of cynical attitude that, because we don't want to be offensive, we're going to allow X number of people to die every year violently, and X number of people to be maimed, and X number of people to be orphaned. You're going to have to absorb that into your society. So it's a shit sandwich, I'll grant you.
Yeah.
None of these are great options, but it's the set of options that's being forced upon you.
Yeah.
War is here.
Mm-hmm.
Choose which way you want to respond. I know how I'm going to respond. I have sort of my plan afoot. Your mileage may vary.
Mm-hmm. So I like Will Parker's point here, Dr. Fuller. Says Japan has very strict laws about allowing these people, as does Poland, as does Hungary. And guess what? They don't have people plowing through their Christmas parades.
Right. These are also countries. One of the things that all three of those countries have in common is they are very homogenous societies. Very. I mean, Japan is 97, 98% Japanese.
But Dr. Fuller, Germany and the UK was the same way. Come on, man.
But they aren't anymore.
But they're now.
No. Not now. They're not now. And do the math. Poland did not have the immigration policies that much of the rest of Europe did. And look at Poland now versus the rest of Asia, or the rest of Europe. Now you can call that Islamophobic if you want to.
I don't think they would care about that.
I just simply say, look, I'm not making any judgment calls here. I'm just saying, look at the results.
Yes.
I didn't create these policies. I'm just pointing out the fact that that's what's gone on there.
Think about the damage Angela Merkel and her administration did. I mean, they destroyed that country. And I don't know if they'll ever get it back. Same for the UK. But Alan says the police tactics on Bonnie Beach were lacking and slow reacting. Just what I observed. I think you're absolutely right. They're not. I think people here in America think that all policing around the world is like what we have here. It ain't, buddy. It ain't even close.
No, and you're drawing police officers in Australia who have grown up in a society for 2 generations now that has been disarmed. So you juxtapose that with the American law enforcement officer video that came out last year, where he comes screaming up on an active scene, guys shooting at people. He gets out and he calmly takes his AR out of the back of the car, racks around, and boom, puts one round down range at 75 yards, 100 yards. And the next thing you hear on the radio is shooters down. Yeah. Right. That is a cultural difference. That's not just a training and equipment difference. That is a cultural difference.
Yeah.
So, again, choose your response. Which response do you want? Do you want 12 innocent people dead, or do you want one bad guy dead? I know which way I vote. But you have politicians who are completely divorced from the repercussions of their decisions. Right? They make decisions that sound great. And we're making so many choices these days that are based on things that sound great, not on, on what actually works. But this sounds great, so we're going to make choices about this thing. Everybody gets a hug. We love all religions. All cultures are equal.
Not even close.
They just don't appear to be. Historically speaking, they don't appear to be. So, do you want to be a pragmatist or you want to be an idealist? I'm all for us being driven by our better angels, but I'm also kind of a Reagan realist. Trust but verify.
Amen.
I'll trust that you didn't bring any live weapons into the training environment, but I'm going to verify it by patting you down.
Damn right. And you would think, well, you don't need to do that with adults. Yeah, you do. And, that's the only way to do it. Will says the UK, France, and Germany may want to seriously consider what Europe, England, and Spain did between 1095 and 1291. However, they would need to do it in a couple of months. Yeah, they're going to do it fast. By 2040, I think the demographers say it's a wrap, And I also talked to someone who was, demographically speaking, South Korea is in trouble. I think their replacement rate's 0.71, and you need a 2.11 or something like that to replace the existing population. And this Korean friend, she says, yeah, but they're bringing people in. I'm like, time out. Don't bring people in. You've already got the people there. They're amazing. South Korean people are smart. And she's like, yeah, but they place work and productivity ahead of everything. And I said, well, that's the problem, because when you bring in a population that doesn't, I'm looking at you, Somalis up there, and you're just going to pull from the system, it's going to collapse. And she's like, well, what can they do? I'm like, you incentivize the birth of children to the tune of, you have 4 children, you ain't paying taxes ever again. You know what I mean? Do something like that.
And honestly, if you want to jumpstart that program in South Korea, put in another division of Army soldiers and another division of Marines in the country, and you'll see birth rates go through the ceiling.
That's right. Because Marines love Korean girls.
Yes, they do. And so the Army. My first wife was ethnic Korean, but from Fresno. And every time we'd go into the PX on the bases, there'd be a lot of Korean women working in the PXs. I'm sure it was the same on Marine Corps bases.
But Filipinos, because we're not. It's Filipino mafia. Seriously.
Okay. But I believe it. But they'd be working in the PX, and so they would invariably come running up to her and want to talk. Like, she's a new member of the Korean community that we didn't know. Let's meet her. And they're being very friendly, trying to talk to her in Hangul, and she's like, "Oh my God, I don't speak your language."
I'm from Fresno. What are you doing?
Fresno. And it was hysterical to watch. And then they think, "Oh, she's just being a uppity. She's just being." No, she legitimately barely speaks English, let alone your language. So yeah, the Army soldiers do love themselves some Koreans. Well, have you solved anything today, Rich?
I don't know that we've solved anything, but it's been a pleasurable hour and 18 minutes just talking to you, Dr. Fuller.
Food for thought, right? Put some thought into this, folks, because it's interesting times, like you say, Rich, and it at least bears some kind of thought process. Think about your situation. Think about how you can improve your situation. Get the training, get the materials you need, because how many times have we said it, Rich? The fight is coming. Be ready.
Amen. Merry Christmas, guys.